everybody. Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skarupski. On today's episode of the Fact Chat, the Faculty Chat, I wanted to reflect on our recent professional development conference in Chicago. It was just 2 weeks ago, and I'm still kind of jazzed up about it and all the great sessions we attended and the really interesting conversations. And particularly, I wanted to follow up on Dr. Charlie Irvin, the Associate Dean for Faculty at the University of Vermont, and my session. It was an Ignite session, and it was entitled Disruptive Innovation. Is it time for precision faculty development? And I got to say, when Charlie and I were planning this, in my head, and maybe I never articulated out loud to Charlie, but I honestly thought we'd be sitting around a big round table with maybe 12 or 14 people. And so I didn't, freak out about over planning too much. And then we walked into the room and there were, where's my numbers here? There were 113 people when I counted. So it was a little bit more than I expected, but it was really, the room was abuzz. And I think it was great and I loved it. And I really wanted to take today's Fact Chat opportunity to hopefully continue this conversation, because it's just, I can't get out of my head. So what I thought I would do is just read over the abstract that we submitted for just to ground us, and maybe some of you weren't at the session in Chicago, and I'm going to read this to you. So again, it was an Ignite session called Disruptive Innovation. Is it time for precision faculty development? What if we gave you $1 million Ferrari for your next birthday? Would you take good care of it? Would you be proud of it? Would you make sure it is properly maintained, feed it the best fuel, polish it up, take it out on the open road and let it do what Ferraris do best? Our faculty are Ferraris, and our institutions invest millions of dollars in them. But do we properly maintain them? Precision medicine is a medical model that customizes care to the individual patient. Precision education customizes the learning experience to the individual student. Similarly, we propose that precision faculty development would customize professional development to the individual faculty member. In the faculty development world, we develop and facilitate myriad seminars, workshops, lunch and learns, panel presentations, webinars, retreats, and leadership programs. We design some of our programming for special populations. For example, leadership programs for women only, for underrepresented in medicine faculty members, for mid-career, later career, or executives. However, aside from incorporating adult learning principles and perhaps employing multiple modalities of instruction in our faculty development work, we have been slow to harness informatics, abundant data, and artificial intelligence to innovate faculty development. In the AAMC Future of Academic Medicine series, Academic Medicine in 2025, Notable Trends and 5 Future Forces, we read that imminent changes are combinatorial, combining and recombining trends, factors, and disruptions that could lead to large cultural, social, and technological shifts over the next decade. Our future faculty members will be accustomed to learning on demand. They will be facile in gathering data and using tools and resources. As faculty development leaders, we must be equally facile in retooling to meet their needs. So that was the abstract that Charlie Irvin and I submitted back in whenever the calls went out to the AAMC Group on Faculty Affairs Professional Development Conference that just happened 2 weeks ago. Now, we had to do a little teaser during lunchtime, which when I heard teaser, when I read teaser, Pavlovian, I've been trained to think of a teaser slide, so I put together a slide that we were not allowed to show. And footnote, we certainly did not show the slide that we prepared, and we would never have violated the rules by, at our session, putting that slide up on the board, on the screen, wink, wink. But we did show in that imaginary slide the Ferrari and the fact that precision medicine, customizing care to the patient, precision education, customizing learning to the student, in precision faculty development, how would we customize development for each and every faculty member? Well, it can't be done. It's just ridiculous. That's way too much work. I'm thinking at Hopkins, we have over 3,000 faculty members. How in the world would we ever develop an individual development plan and customize training for over 3,000 people? But pretend that we could do it. What might we have to pay attention to? Well, we have right now, we know machine learning and models to predict lung function, risk for prostate cancer, and multiple sclerosis. Why couldn't we predict faculty success? And then I had all the pictures of, that movie with the robots. I think it was iRobot with Will Smith in it, but I love that concept of we're creating all these robots. And, we have this group of robots that were almost like machines, making them the same and working so hard and maybe stripping away their unique features because we want them to be these robots in the labs and in the clinics generating money. And if we customize everything to each faculty member, there goes the sense of community that we talk about a lot when we do our leadership programs. For example, when we have these cohort programs that occur over a period of time, what we have all observed is that the participants really enjoy that networking and that sense of community. So imagine a whole warehouse full of these identical robots that aren't really engaged with each other because they all have their earbuds in or they're jacked into their phones and they're not really engaging with each other as human beings. So that I have this little bit of a sci-fi fear of if we customize everything, how does that take away the sense of building community and we-ness and connecting as people in a community and in a culture? Well, that's maybe a different discussion, but that brings me up to speed on what that session looked like. And then again, 113 people. We talked first about, well, let me back up a second. I wanted to say, well, how did we even get here? And I got here, it was last year, and I think it was in Texas, the meeting before this past one in Chicago, but it was somewhere in Texas, Austin or San Antonio, I don't know, Texas is big. But anyway, we had a session, the up at night session. And so I remember going to that, and I brought up this idea of precision faculty development, and Charlie Irvin was sitting at the table with me, and he kind of looked at me and raised that eyebrow of his, and he kind of was nodding, and he had that twinkle in his eye, and I said, okay, you in with me? And so we talked afterwards. He's like, oh yeah, I'm in, let's do it. So he and I decided to partner in crime to do this session. And so that's how it came about. And then as a backdrop, I just can't get this concept out of my mind. I went to a seminar at Hopkins. It was this guy from the Broad, and I got to find his name out, but the topic was, our Vice Dean for Research, Dr. Anthony Rosen, brought this man in, and they talked about transformational mathematical ideas of our time. And he spent some time talking about cloud computing and machine learning, and it got me thinking again. It's just another thing of a coincidence, and I don't believe in coincidences, but it put me down this path of we have to figure out this faculty development more efficiently. Then, of course, not of course, but, reading, I read a lot, right? Leaders are readers. So Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow got me thinking about this concept more. And then most recently reading, again, Michael Lewis, he's the author of Moneyball, The Undoing Project, and then David Brooks's The Social Animal. It's kind of just been bringing me closer to try to figure out this question about faculty development. And, it got me wondering, can we moneyball faculty development? Can we come up with an algorithm? Is there a formula? How can we predict faculty success? Can we do a better job of helping our faculty members be all they can be and succeed? And then what I did, during the session, because we asked everybody who was in our Ignite session, Charlie and I said, okay, now at your tables, talk about, if we were to do precision faculty development, and admittedly, sidebar, a lot of us do that. We say, well, duh, we meet with faculty members, we mentor, we coach, we put individual development plans, these IDPs. So we are doing this, some level of career navigation on a one-off level, one-to-one, but it's not standardized. It's not across the board. We haven't, to my knowledge, nobody has, done the protocol for all faculty. So everybody broke up and started talking about this, how would we do it? And it was really an energetic conversation. And somebody in the room pointed out, maybe it was Archie Chatterjee, that Baylor and the AAMC are already piloting this concept of a national or universal promotion model. So that's like thinking about how can we standardize training, and then, the idea perhaps of having a big tree trunk, a standardized curriculum, and then the branches would be the customized portions, electives, if you will, in a curriculum that would be customized to each faculty member. And that dovetailed nicely with what Charlie Irvin had said. Faculty are like snowflakes. There are no two of them alike. So, of course, it doesn't make sense. Just like no tumors are alike, you don't treat all tumors alike. However, there is a best practice that you kind of maybe, and then I'm not a physician or so I don't treat diseases this way, but I imagine there's a certain protocol for the basic, core curriculum, if you will, of treating a disease. And then there are nuanced gradations of some kind of treatment, medication or therapy or radiation, if you will, based on that unique tumor. So if our faculty members are unique in that way, can't we figure out how to do this more efficiently? And then, of course, another sidebar is we have to make sure we do research and the scholarship, we have to get this stuff out there. So that's a topic for another conversation that in our research and project development subcommittee, led by Dr. Troy Buer, gave a fantastic workshop on scholarship. And so we got to figure out a good model to get journals out there to put our research out there. But okay, anyway, we know we have to do research and scholarship to help our field advance. So back to this idea of moneyballing faculty development. I can't get it out of my head that, and I talked about this in our Ignite session, that Amazon.com has a fantastic way that they've figured this whole thing out. When I go online to look for some shoes, I think I gave the example in the session of a red dress. I go to Amazon and and I just type in women's shoes and it'll say, do you want to sort by color or size or money or designer, type of shoe, the price of the shoe, or the customer rating of the shoe. And I can click all these different features and hone in and get, only maybe 5 pages versus 1,000 of shoes. Then I buy that shoe, pick out what I want, and they are so good at telling me, hey, we got your order placed. We're filling your order. Your order is put on the truck. The order's being shipped. Your shoes are a-coming. Here's a tracking number if you're really curious to know every step those shoes are taken. By the way, your shoes just got delivered at your front door. Hope you like them. Whoopsie, you live in Baltimore, so your shoes have just been stolen. Fortunately, we know which ones you ordered. Do you want to order them again? Maybe you want them in another color. And then 6 months thereafter, anytime I'm on the Google, I'm getting shoe advertisements because they know I like this kind of shoe. And hey, you bought this shoe, you might want to buy that shoe. Other people who bought this shoe also bought this. Do you want this purse? This purse would look fabulous with those shoes. So marketers, Amazon, Google, these people have figured out how to entice us or seduce us. So this gets to what Dr. Martin Feeder at the University of Chicago and I have been talking about recently. Dr. Feeder is the Dean for Academic Affairs at the University of Chicago, and he and I have known each other for, more than a decade when I was back at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. He has a great blog, Deconomics, super genius guy, but he and I debate back and forth about, this notion of carrot and stick. How do you get faculty members to the water? How do you get the horse to the water? Because, again, the marketing people, they've figured out how to seduce us and to entice us, and they know how to put these pictures and images in our mind that compel us to click on something and get it. Maybe it's some endorphin hit. I don't know what it is, but they figured this out, and it just kind of infuriated me. How come they figured it out and we can't? They're certainly not smarter than we are in academic medicine. And maybe it's not that we can't, it's just that we've not really had a will to this point to figure that out. And then someone at the workshop rightly pointed out that, yeah, Amazon has figured this out, but sometimes they mess up. So sometimes they do put these pop-ups on our future Amazon searches, or in Google says, hey, you might like this couch. And I think, no, I don't like that couch at all. Why in the world? So somewhere in their algorithms, they figured out, well, if I like this, what are the chances that they might like that? And I don't like that. And then I wish that would go away. And then I wish they'd stop sending me those stupid advertisements. So I say, go away, advertisement. Don't show up here again. I don't like you. And then they say, well, why don't you like me? Can you tell me why you don't like my advertisement? No, I don't want to tell you that, but it annoys me. So we don't want to run the risk of annoying our faculty members by similarly saying, hey, you went to this workshop on time management. Do you also want to go to this workshop on time management? It's only 6 hours long, but it's a good investment of your time. No, I don't want to go to a 6-hour session on time management. That's nonsense. So we don't want to risk alienating our faculty members. So that is definitely, something we have to be mindful of, not copying, of course, learning the good things about our peers in other industries, but being mindful of not duplicating or making their same mistakes. So, again, back to this whole thing of Amazon, I always talk about this, like it just seems so obvious to me that we should be able to figure out ways of helping make things easier for our faculty in terms of faculty development. And then some of the other follow-up was in the workshop was, all right, so we figured out how we could do it. We talked sort of about how we could do it, customizing and figuring out the niche for each faculty member. One table had a really interesting concept of, we talk about promotion, and there are certain tracks and pathways of doing that, and certainly criteria. But there are some institutions, and I think University of Chicago, Dr. Frieder, they seem to have this system in place where you recognize the unique niche or fit for each faculty member, and recognizing that, again, as a snowflake, they're not going to fit in a certain specific lane of, some very, it's hard to put them in a model of, or a prototype of a faculty member in XYZ, because they're all so unique. And that's what I'm sure each of us understands, that when faculty members come to us in our institutions as practitioners and research practitioners and educators and program builders and scientists and all the various permutations and combinations of all those interests, they're like, well, I'm unique, I'm different. Well, of course you are. We get that. Everybody's unique and different. So there are some schools that have done, I think, a better job of recognizing that you can't just simply count number of publications and try to stuff somebody into a box that says, yeah, that looks like an associate professor, or yeah, that looks like a professor, because they're so unique and have different impact, national and international impact, in different ways. And that's manifested differently depending on their own combinations. So we spent a little bit of time, and I think it was only an hour session, so it was pretty fast. But then I said, okay, we talked about how we get how to do one-on-one working with faculty, but how do we scale that up? And I think, again, it was Archie Chatterjee who said, well, we think precision medicine and precision education as one patient, one learner. So that's why we were focused on one faculty member, precision faculty development. But then we recognize, well, we have to scale that up. How do we do that for hundreds and thousands of faculty? Well, that led to this idea of, all right, where are the gaps? So what would we need to do to be able to scale this up? And this is where we got into the idea of, okay, certainly we know the gaps are, nobody has time. There's no time in the day for our faculty. There's no time in the day for any of us. We hear everybody's in the cult of busy. Right? I'm so busy, we've not had time to go to the restroom or eat in weeks and months and all this, or sleeping. Nobody has time for anything. Understood. Nobody has any budget or resources. Understood. Everyone's being discourteous and, this uncivil behavior is running rampant and bullying and people are being acting badly. And so we know all these things are our gaps and problems that we have to deal with. We don't have adequate peer mentoring or team mentoring models. And some of the gaps are that we have this buffet menu of faculty development offerings, which Martin and I, Dr. Feeder, were talking yesterday about this idea of a smorgasbord or huge food court. Faculty come into our universities and they walk in the middle of the food court and their heads are spinning around and we're saying, what do you want for lunch? And you want this, you want that, you want something fast, you want something slow, do you something cheap or more expensive, something this or that, and it's just too many to choose from. They may be overwhelmed by the options. They don't know what they want, or they're like, well, I want pate. And we're like, well, geez, our food court doesn't offer pate. We have sushi. No, that won't do. Well, then that's a mismatch. So we talk about the buffet menu can be good, but a gap could be that it's too much and it's just too overwhelming, and maybe it's that you get that decision paralysis. So that was part of that conversation. But anyway, the one gap that was mentioned that I found really intriguing, got to my whole idea of, again, moneyballing faculty development, was this idea of faculty phenotypes or profiles of faculty members. So someone mentioned in the room, they're like, well, back to your Amazon.com model. There's Ancestry.com, there's 23andMe, these ideas of, genetic profiling. Can we profile faculty types? And I think I'm going to hold that for a second, because keeping that as in mind of a phenotype, how do we reach different faculty members, or as Martin talks about, how do we get these horses to the water? I'm going back to the books I've been reading of The Undoing Project, The Social Animal. I got thinking about, again, the model, the mathematical model or computing, and how can we have a lot of data. Part of the challenge with the way the Moneyball concept came up was this baseball, the Oakland Athletics, and they were having trouble recruiting, or they wanted better new ways to value baseball players and their strategies. So they got this guy who loved data, and the way that Kahneman ended up winning for example, the Nobel Prize as a psychologist, he wasn't an economist, was he had all this data. Well, we have data too. We just don't put it all together. But back to the data thing, I'm a sociologist by training, so lots of quantitative stuff. So I got right into a regression model. So if y is a function of x, the first question as a faculty development is then, what is the y? What is the dependent variable? Is it a good recruit? Is it high retention? Is it time to promotion? Is it promotion? Is it number of publications, number of grants, satisfaction, low burnout? What are the whys? So that kind of sent me off on a tangent, thinking there's so many whys, there's so many dependent variables if we're going to try to predict something. Then it's a function of x. Well, what are the x's? What are the independent variables? What are all the factors we would need to model? Of course, the sociodemographics, it's age, it's sex, it's gender, it's ethnicity, is it religion, is it parental training, is it undergraduate, graduate training, is it IQ, is it EQ, income, is it marital status, number of children, field, specialty, on and on and on and on. And then you start thinking, well, what is the slope and how would these things look? And then I got to the point in the regression equation, have the y is a plus bx, where then you get the e, you get the error. How do we measure the error? And that's where Kahneman and the Moneyball stuff is, that they figured out that, and I'm oversimplifying this, and there, you have a certain thing of a gist, like the numbers weren't working the way they thought they should, that the models weren't predicting how they thought they should predict because of error, because of thinking error and cognitive biases and assumptions we make. And that ran me right back to, oh my gosh, well, Kim, what are you doing? How could we model this mathematically when back up with, at least with ordinary least squares regression, there are certain assumptions we make. And two of the, I think, four assumptions are linearity and normality. And then I'm like, wait a minute, there's nothing linear about a faculty member's career. The career trajectories go off all over the place. And there's certainly nothing normal. Back to Charlie Irvin's, faculty are snowflakes and tumors. There's nothing normal about these things. Is there anything normal? How can we try to predict something that's not normal or linear and all this unknown error? It's like trying to predict a cloud. Clouds are better predicted or described through qualitative data. You can describe a cloud. You can't predict a cloud. I think that was in the Undoing Project or maybe the Social Animal. I don't know. Or similarly, that they talked about catching a fly ball. No computer would ever be able to calculate how to catch a fly ball because there are too many trajectories to calculate, but a good player would be able to look up in the air and calculate the speed and the drop, and they'd be able to catch that. So there's something about a gist or a feeling, which brought me right back to, again, what we do is in faculty development. How do we come up with these programs? How do we reach our faculty? How do we maximize our work? Because we all have inadequate resources and no time ourselves, and it's just so much. And then Martin and I were talking, again, Martin Feeder yesterday, and he hooked me on to this Isaac Asimov's, I guess that's an old Foundation trilogy. And this Asimov talked about, he made up this term psychohistory, being able to predict the past that comes down to lots of data. You need lots of data. And so I have to read that book. I'm really curious about that. But a lot of these things, I'm reading and we're thinking about always come back to the data. So I can't help but, again, in my monkey mind here thinking, we have data. Are we perhaps not utilizing it like we can? So now I want to shift back to this phenotype concept that we talked about in our Ignite session. Is this, maybe this is too simplistic, but if we talk about Martin's basic question, how do we get the horses to the water? How do you entice faculty members to, first of all, want to engage in faculty development and then drink the Kool-Aid and recognize that, work with us to help with the precision faculty development? How do we get them to say, yeah, this is for me? And that's the whole idea of this carrot and stick concept. And in addition to Amazon.com, we think about politics too, President Trump, and how people in politics have figured out a good way of using carrots and sticks, primarily sticks, fear or scare tactics as a stick. So maybe faculty members, if you're not going to be engaging with faculty development, you're going to have lower rates of promotion, or you're not going to be as successful. You're probably not going to have as many leadership positions. You're probably going to have higher burnout. So we put the fear of God into them that, oh my gosh, I better, haul myself to the faculty development landscape and get involved there because I'm afraid now I'm going to be a failure. And of course, to be able to say that, we'd have to have the data that documents that is in fact true. That's the stick side. The carrot side is, oh my gosh, do you know friends of yours who bought these red shoes also bought this red dress and they're loving it and they're crushing it. They're all over social media. People are really, they're number one out there. You got to do it too. And so, that's the whole seduction. I want to be there too. I want to be successful. I want to have the nice shoes, the nice dress. Of course, not a metaphor, but I want to take those classes and learn how to be a leader and communicate better and negotiate better and build teams better. Yeah, that's great. I want to be just like those folks who are doing it well. So seducing them, as our South American counterparts at Johns Hopkins International, this one guy laughed at me and he said, oh, you in America, you always talk about recruiting and retaining your faculty. We talk about seducing them. maybe that's a different conversation as well, about, especially in the Harvey Weinstein world. But anyway, we'll put that aside. But carrot, seduction, enticement, whatever you want to say it, versus fear or sticks. Well, that got me to this, again, the phenotyping. If you imagine with me a 2x2. So 2x2 matrix, we have engagement at the upper left and unengaged. So imagine it's engagement, top left column, unengagement or unengaged right column. And for lack of anything that sounds intelligent, on the row, it's okay, and the bottom row is not okay. So we have a 2x2. Engaged, unengaged, they're okay, they're not okay. And again, I understand this is being very simplistic and crude, so apologies to everybody out there who's like already totally annoyed with me. But if in the upper right-hand quadrant where they're unengaged with the faculty development, unengaged with the concept of faculty development, and these could be leaders, department leaders, whatever, or faculty, but they're okay. Okay, meaning, what do you mean, Kim, they're okay? Well, by all measures, their RVUs are fine, their student evaluations are fine, they're publishing at a good pace, they are getting grants or they're applying for grants, they don't seem to be burning out by all objective measures, and that's, again, the why, with the why, the dependent variables, we haven't really established what we're talking about here, but they're okay by some measurable criteria. They're unengaged with us. They're okay. Well, we put a big X through that box. We're going to leave them be. Those are the self-learners. They may never engage with us because they're too cool for school. And they are because they're like, they don't need this. They've had great mentorships. They're born knowing what they want to do, and they're off and running. And we don't need to worry about them, so to speak. So we put an X through that box, or at least I did. Now I'm shifting over one quadrant to the left. That's the engaged, and they are okay. So these are the faculty or the directors or leaders, in my mind, who are, they drink the Kool-Aid. They understand that faculty development is a benefit that is helpful to them, that can help them improve in various ways. And they're okay. So again, by those objective measures, they seem to be doing well, and they are engaged. They are in the choir. They're in our parish, if you will. They're tithing. They get it. So we're going to put a check mark because we're checking the box. Those people are doing well. They're helping. We're keeping track of them, and we're very satisfied with that group. Now I'm dropping down in the lower left quadrant. Those folks are engaged, but they're not doing okay. So these are the folks we say, well, what? It's a big question mark. What's going on here? If they are engaged in our faculty development efforts, but they're not doing okay because what? They don't have the adequate RVUs, or getting maybe bad teaching evals. They're not publishing their grants. They're not writing grants, or the grants aren't getting funded. They've got low satisfaction or high burnout, or fill in the blank, or whatever the dependent variable is or are. What do we need to do here? Why are they not? Do we need more of something? Do we need different somethings? And this is, I think, where precision faculty development probably makes the most sense. They need the more intense, the electives. That's maybe the phenotype, the group where we should focus our efforts on them because they're not satisfied, or they're not, they just need more intense work. So maybe that's where precision faculty development fits in. Then the final cell is the lower right quadrant where they are unengaged and they're not okay. So maybe these folks won't ever engage with us. They think they're fine. They think they don't need us, but they actually do. So they're not working with us at all, and by some measures, they're in trouble. Behaviorally in trouble. They're emotionally, mentally, leadershipy. They're in trouble. So then it's like, how do we get them in that upper left quadrant? How do we get them to engage and then be okay? Or at least minimally shift to the left. How do we get them engaged and figure out how to get them out of the not okay? Or, how do we work with them? So I'm thinking that precision faculty development fits in the bottom two quadrants. And the lower right quadrant is where, again, back to Martin Feeder, how do we get those folks to the water? How do you bring the horses to the water? You can get a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. So how do we get them to the water, and then how do we make them drink? Well, maybe this is another conversation, but I'm just going to keep going here. So, we don't know what we don't know, and we know that we don't know this, that epistemological modesty, right? The knowledge of how little we do know. And what Kahneman and Moneyball and this idea, David Brooks and the social animal teaches us that with behavioral economics, we know that people are irrational. We have these cognitive biases. So how do we figure out what we don't know and help get these faculty engaged, and then figure out what they don't know and help them, buy in? Maybe we don't focus our efforts on getting them to the water, but rather we bring the water to them. Maybe that's exactly where the precision faculty development goes, is that we don't wait for them to come to us, although behavioral economists will say people will change when they are ready to change. But maybe we entice them or seduce them by, bringing the water to where they are and sitting it down there, bringing them a nice little pretty petit-four or a nice pair of shoes or a nice frosty beer, and you put it down next to them and then you walk away. You're welcome. And then they're intrigued and they're enticed, and then they start thinking, And by that I mean we get smart about delivering our faculty development and I can't remember the colleague's name, because years back they talk about doing snippets, SNIPPETS, snippets of faculty development, that we just kind of tickle and tease with little bits of yummy, delicious, or inspiring, or little sound bites that show them and help reinforce this idea that, yeah, we can help fit faculty development into your crazy busy world. And maybe that's one way, that we don't focus our efforts on bringing them to us, rather we go to them. And again, all this is on the backdrop of this fact that our faculty members are completely overwhelmed, overworked, undervalued, burnout's high and crazy. And it reminded me of one of the books I was reading. Frederick Taylor talked about, we're trying to turn factory workers into hyper-efficient cogs. Frederick Taylor talked about factory workers, hyper-efficient cogs. And of course, anytime I read anything, I always substitute faculty. And I feel the same way. We're trying to turn our faculty into hyper-efficient cogs, but to what expense? To what cost? And we're seeing that. We're seeing it in the burnout, and we're seeing that in perhaps people becoming cynical about faculty development and its value and its the level of engagement we have or don't have. Anyway, I think I'm going to probably wind up there, but just by saying that the precision faculty development, I think, is an interesting model. I think there's a lot that we need to think and explore more. We need theory. We need framework. We need to know more about behavioral economists. Maybe we can get some of them, on in faculty development. Maybe we can invite some to our conferences in the future. I don't know. It's confusing. As Dan Shapiro at Penn State, I love this guy. He's so creative. And his podcast, maybe you listen to it, he says, I don't know, I'm confused every day. And that's how I feel. But what a blessing, what a gift it is for us to be working in this field where we have the capacity to help and impact so many young people, the people of our future. So I don't know. It's interesting. And as my mom always says, Scarlett Skarupski, my mother, always says, oh, who has more fun than people? Which is so ridiculous. But anyway, that's my mom. Well, I hope I didn't annoy you too much. I just wanted to keep the conversation going. Let's talk about precision faculty development. Join in the conversation. I don't know. You have any thoughts on how we can moneyball faculty development? Join the podcast. I told somebody at the conference, they said, oh, do you have a studio? I said, yeah, I got a studio. It's in my basement. And they're like, oh, I couldn't get to your basement. I don't have that kind of budget. And I'm like, well, no. I sit in my basement. You just call me. You call me on the phone and we talk. I'm in my pajamas or my sweatpants, but you can call me from anywhere. So shoot me an email if you want to be on the podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for being on the Faculty Factory podcast. Spread the news and hope to see you all at the next conference. We don't know where it's going to be, but see you all next time. Thanks. Bye. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.